Hello and welcome to this new Tech Talks. Today we're going to talk about the top 10 glass table design principles to boost your career, but also your business. My name is Stefan Esteves and I'm the EMEA Product Marketing Director for IT Markets at Splunk. And as you can hear, I'm French, so sorry for my accent, but nothing I can do about it. So our agenda today, the idea is to start with why data visualization matters. I know that we all want to talk about technology, data, and so on, but we need to keep in mind that um, everything we do is to serve humans. So we need to make sure that they understand the data that we provide, that they understand the dashboard that we are creating. Sorry. So we need to understand why data visualization is something that is really important. And for that, we're going to go through the 10 major design principles that you can apply, not only to create glass tables and dashboards, but even in other areas of IT. And I will quickly show you how you can use them in Splunk with different products. The idea is to avoid what we see on the left side, something that you don't want to look at, that your users don't want to use. And keep in mind that the dashboard, the glass table, is something people will have to look day in, day out. So you have to make sure that it makes sense for them. And that's the idea and the purpose of this tech talk. So data visualization, sorry, what it is basically is the practice of converting data, so the raw figures, into something that is graphical, something that people can more easily understand. Think about this. Here you have the data itself, the raw figures, doesn't really tell you a story. You need to spend a lot of time to try to understand trends and see what's going on and what I'm looking at. If you transform that into a graphical representation, then here, in milliseconds, you understand what you're looking at. You see trends, you see comparisons, and so on. And that's the overall concept. So data visualization is something that is really important to help understand the data and take action. And this is part of the human thing, right? Because it started 15,000 years ago in Lascaux cave in France, by the way, where the first humans start doing visualizations and drawing stuff on the cave to share information. And as you can see here in this great website, Canadian website that you can look at, it tells you all the different new techniques to share information about data visualization, enhancements, and so on. So you see that this is something that we keep creating new ways of sharing data because data is really important, even more nowadays. So how meaningful is data visualization? I mean, think about everything that is graphical can be really quickly be understood by your brain. Your brain is organized to understand an image in 13 milliseconds. That's the latest MIT study. It's telling us that in 13 milliseconds, you can process an image. And while you look into the next image, you keep processing the previous one, something that you cannot do with text and numbers. So as much as you can when you share information, whether it's about an alert, an incident, or reporting or whatever, make it visual. And for that, you can use 10, I would say, overall principles of design. These principles are generic. Anything I'm going to explain to you works whatever the tool, but the objective here is that you can apply it for Splunk ITSI, for instance, which is our service monitoring tool that can show across all the different layers of your IT stack, see the overall service performance and how a container in the cloud can affect a business KPI, for instance. So really a great tool for service monitoring, but also something you can use with a new free Splunk dashboard application, which is in beta, that can help you get all the Splunk data and show it in a very nice visual way. So let's rule or principle number one: glass tables or dashboards are not reports. What it means, it's the idea is not show as much details as you can, but just show data that can generate an action. So focus on the most important data. It has to be dynamic, I would say real time. Allow a quick action, and just it's as simple and easy as possible. So don't think that a glass table or a dashboard is a report. It's two different things, two different meanings. Principle number two: start with paper. I know that when we download, so if you download the new dashboard, app, and so on. We want to play with the technology. We want to start with the technology. And for instance, the first time you download Photoshop, I'm pretty sure the first photo that we create is usually ugly because we want just to test everything. Here, it's for your career. It is for your organization. So start with paper. uh, you need to understand who I'm talking about. What is my audience? What do they need to understand? What kind of information do they need from me or for my team? What is the best way to share graphically this information with my audience? And do they have the ability to understand the data? Because you, as an expert, you understand it, but make sure that your audience have the capabilities to understand. So in terms of the content, keep it as minimum as possible, just relevant, focus, and less is really more. And as just to take a sentence from Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, which is a French writer, perfection is achieved not when there is nothing left to add, but when there is nothing left to remove. And that's really the idea. So avoid over designing and use as much as possible iconography, right? It text and charts, sorry, are great, but icons are even better. And as you know, now you can use SVGs, PNGs. They can change color based on thresholds and so on. And so use icons as much as you can. Uh, Principle number 3: fonts and colors. They matter. I mean, you might say, "Oh, come on, it's just fonts." Look to these two examples, right? I will always find you. The first one looks pretty cool. Your girlfriend or boyfriend is maybe sending you, writing this letter. That's cool. If your boyfriend or girlfriend writes the second sentence with the second font, then you are in trouble. So as you see, fonts does matter. So stick to only one font. Use as maximum 3 different sizes if you want to create some visual hierarchy, or use bold, but don't abuse about bolding. Um, and very often when you see the fonts of your computer, you see the serif and the sans serif. So basically, if you think about the serif fonts, they are the ones on the left in this example with the big F, capital F. This is for very long text. So basically, I would recommend to go always for sans serif fonts because they have been created for headlines or for very short blocks of text. And as I'd say, this is for dashboards and not reports. So limit text as much as you can. In terms of colors, just choose few. If you have doubts, ask your marketing team. Maybe they have some corporate color codes that you may want to reuse. It's always good to use company graphical guidelines. And if you don't know how to really play with contracts and colors, I mean, there's an online tools like the Adobe Color Wheel that can really help you to select which colors works well with the others, and so on. And keep attention to the meaning of colors. I mean, we all know that red, amber, green, good. It says bad, kind of bad, or good. So use that. But again, if you think about the first principle, know your audience, they might have a different understanding. So you need to make sure that you understand your audience. Because, for instance, black in a Western country means death. It's white in Asian countries. So understand who you're talking to, and make sure that also the colors work well with the background. It's again, it's you need to have the brain to go to these 13 milliseconds to understand quickly the story of what's happening so they can take an action. And that's even more true when our dashboard is for alerting and monitoring and troubleshooting. So principle number 4, choose the right representation of data. Here we're going to talk about charts, but then they're all very different. They have been created to serve a specific meaning. So you need to understand which chart to use for what and so on. It's not because they look good that they are easy to understand, right? So be careful about that. Here are some examples. You don't have to read all this because this will be available online and so on. But as you can see, the charts are the pros and cons. So depending on your audience and when you want to tell, you might select the right ones. For instance, I know that people love using coaches. They look good, but they only provide one dimension, a single dimension of information. So they're taking a lot of space, providing a limited amount of information. So if your dashboard is very, very simple, great. If you have to share a lot of information, that might not be the best way. That's some examples. And organize them. I mean, even if you're using the right chart, you see here the bar chart, organize and from the bigger to the medium and smaller and so on. So it's more easy to understand, right? So people don't have to go into what series one is and which one is the biggest one and so on. So make it simple for them. The idea is when you selected the chart, make sure you increase what we call the data to ink ratio. Again, simplify, organize. So it's your job, our job to make sure that our audience will understand as fast as possible the information we want to share with them. So a few tips. If you want to compare something, if it's a static comparison, bar and column charts, great ones. If it's something that you want to compare over time, lines, right? Stacked or line charts, whatever. If you want to show composition of something, service, whatever, if it's static, pie chart is the best one. If it's over time, stacked column chart or stacked area chart are really good to show the composition over time and the changes over time. So that's a few tips like that. Principle number 5, follow the eyes. What does it mean? Well, when you look to all the different ways of sharing information, whether it's your e-reader, your newspaper, a book, or mobile application, they have always something in common. Usually, they have been created to be read from left to right and then from top to bottom. That's the idea. So the most important information in your dashboard or class table should be on the top left side. Everything on top is more important than everything is below and so on. Everything on left is more important than everything on the right, because that's the way our brain has been trained to read stuff. But remember again, know your audience. That's true in many countries, not all the countries, right? So if you're targeting users in Asia, for instance, in Middle East, they have a different way of reading. So you might want to switch or create different dashboards for them, because again, it's not everything. Even if everything starts to be more internationalized, that's not always the case. So keep always in mind who you're talking to, and then you can build solutions like that. This is an example of online banking. When we see on top left what is more important, which is my overall health of my online banking and my predictive score in 30 minutes, and then below the different services, and then below the tech aspects, so all the different technological layers. That's usually how you organize things. Most important thing is everything okay on top, then how are my service performing, and if there is an issue, then I can go down into, okay, but where this issue is coming from. So as I say, top to down, left to right. And play with space. That's the principle number 6. Organize things in blocks, because moving KPIs or moving icons, you're already telling a story. For instance, if you see here proximity in the middle, by just grouping some icons together and separating the other two, you see that naturally those 4 on the left belongs together and so on. That's very easy. Just moving things, it tells a story. Making them bigger tells hierarchy. Changing the shape is to highlight some, or color orientation will highlight something. So play with the organization and use white space. White space is something also important to play with. And make sure that everything is aligned, because again, your brain will understand when it's properly done, and if it looks good and so on, it looks professional. So always make sure that everything is aligned. And principle number 7, here is some examples customers shared, and I'm not talking here about the design, but what was interesting of what the customer shared about being able to design a diagram in a dashboard to tell a process, to tell a story, that can be really powerful. Example, you're managing a team, you're changing the process or a workflow. Why don't you, instead of just putting the KPIs, show the workflow graphically speaking, then you have the KPIs on top. This is a way that then people will naturally not only see the KPIs because they need to act on the KPIs, but also understand the overall process and be in contact with it. Or sometimes when you have a blocker, someone in part of this process that in a silo that doesn't want to share his data, If you design the process and you show that there is something empty in the middle, I'm sure that management will help you then to go and talk to this person so you can break this silo and get access to the data so you have the overall view of your service. So that's a few tips and tricks to use, and where a graphical representation of a process or flow or something can really help. And that's exactly what's happened. So this is a customer that accepted to talk at one of our conferences. It's a big hotel chain, Accor hotel, and that's exactly what I've done. You see on the right side, databases team were not sharing data, so it couldn't really predict and manage the health score of the service and so on. And after that, this opened the conversation, and they succeed to have the end-to-end view because they show it that something was missing. So that's what to illustrate um, my purpose. Uh, Principle number 8: use a dramatic approach. What it means. I mean, again, don't you can read a little bit later about the 4Cs: rules, context, cogency, communication, and control. But basically, sometimes you need to make things dramatic because it's important. It's needed when it's an alert, when it's something important. So that's the moment when you need to play with outliers and data highlight and how to get attention from people. And there is different rules that you can use. Again, the 4Cs. As this session is limited in time, I won't go through this, but you can go back and read it more carefully. Principle number 9, we always think that we need to have all the fancy tools to create class tables and dashboards and then apply them on Splunk and so on. No, you can use a tool like PowerPoint or Google Slides and a search engine, whatever it's Google, Quant, you name it, and you can create these kind of examples of class tables and dashboard that have been applied for Splunk ITSI, and also you can use for Splunk dashboard app. So first, when you want to create this kind of class table, but you go and you need to design the background image, and then later you can bring the data, bring the KPIs. So everything that you see here, which is in white and green and so on, that's KPIs. This is coming from data. But anything on the background, the icons and so on, the map, it's just one image. Well, what I've done is basically search on a search engine for the different image using a PNG transparent image, or even better, an SVG, because an SVG can change color based on some thresholds or whatever. And use those images that are applied on PowerPoint. And for all the square parts, basically I use PowerPoint, adding a shape and then playing with transparency, gradients. So you can't imagine how powerful PowerPoint can be. And at the end, once this is done, you can apply your KPIs on it. So if you don't know how to look for the images and so on, make sure that you have the right format of image. This is the example of Google for how I found the world map. Went there, search for world map, transparent. Then if you click, you need to click on images, and then on the color, and you can select transparent. Select the right license. So Creative Commons license, for instance, it's like more free to use. And maybe you want to again to talk to your marketing team to use the corporate icons and so on. But if you don't know how to, you can go on websites like, again, Google for images or Flat Icon for SVGs and so on, which are great websites to find all this iconography. And then, so this is where I find all the icons. And for the organization of data, I use PowerPoints, added a background image, added some shapes, play with gradients and so on to make it look a little bit better or focus somewhere. And that's it. That's basically. Once I've done my design, what I've done, and I added fake KPIs to see how things look like. What I've done is then I've deleted all the KPIs, keep all the background, and save this image on PowerPoint as a PNG, and then re-import the PNG in ITSI or in the Splunk dashboard app. and then from there I can bring back my KPIs, and that's it. That's all I need. It's fairly easy. My last recommendation or principle you need to follow is just be trendy. Know your time. What is the current trend? What is my users looking at? And we see, for instance, that the flat design is quite popular nowadays. It's coming from, it has been used for Apple, but now also used by Microsoft and so on. Very minimalist. Again, using sans serif typography as recommended by Steve Jobs, by the way, and so on. Or you can use techniques like overlapping, which is basically flat design, but now we try to add in some kind of 3D, um, fake 3D sensation of space by creating depth and overlapping effects and so on. So again, something that you can really easily do with PowerPoint. So, and the idea is with that you can create these kind of examples where you see on top, my most important thing is my business, where I see my revenue and so on. Then below the overall set of performance, and then below all my infrastructure status, and I try to get everything aligned and so on. Another example here is an hospital. Same. With what's more important is my emergency room, but then below it I have some different information that's important for me that I want to manage, and so on and so on. So if you want to get some additional resources, I mean, you can first, I recommend you to go and see about ITSI if you want to monitor your overall service, or download the Splunk dashboard app if you want to start building really great dashboards based on Splunk data you collected on Splunk. You have a longer presentation version of this presentation, go in more details on Conf, so you can have a look at it. Or just if you want to read something, there is Apple Human Interface Guidelines. It's a great tool. It's where Apple is sharing all the guidelines to design applications on Apple, but there's a lot of stuff to learn. And also the Nielsen Norman Group. That's a huge database of information about design, data visualization, and so on. So it's a great source of information. If you want to carry on the conversation, you can go on community. Also go to Splunk Answers and search for anything that have a tag with dashboard and so on and so on. With that, I would like to thank you and see you in the next Tech Talk.